like to welcome everybody to another edition of RVA Tech's Tech It Yourself webinar series. Thanks so much for joining. We appreciate y'all spending your lunch hour with us. Today, we have a program brought to us by Maine Digital. This program is called Process Intelligence, and it is about the future of process improvement and operations. A couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording this session and putting it in our archives on the website. So if you want to watch it again or share it with friends and colleagues, it will be on our website under the Tech It Yourself section. And next, for Q&A or chat or anything like that, we do have a chat button down below. We also have a Q&A function down below. Please feel free to use either for comments or questions. Today's presentation will go straight through first, and then we will address Q&A and comments at the end. So if anything comes to mind, please put them down there in that chat section, and rest assured we will address them towards the end of the program. And today we will plan to go, obviously starting here at 12 and no later than 1 o'clock, so you all can get back to your workday. All right, I would like to take a moment and introduce our panelists today, who are all from Maine Digital. First, I would like to introduce Steve Nerheim. Steve is the Director of Sales for Maine Digital, where he leads their business development and marketing efforts. And Steve has over 20 years of experience in operations and consulting, including strategy, digital transformation, process engineering, process automation, and user experience design. Along with Steve, we have Chris Behrle. Chris is a manager at Maine Digital with an extensive background in emerging technologies. He's worked with clients across a wide range of industries and has been focused on process intelligence for the last 5 years. His experience includes one of the largest process mining implementations in North America for a Fortune 50 client that is now realizing $6 million a quarter in savings attributed to process intelligence. Chris, welcome. Next up, we have John Cremo Jr. John is a director at Maine Digital and leads the firm's intelligent automation practice. He has 10 years of experience helping organizations with emerging technologies like AI and RPA to gain a competitive advantage. John has led more than 30 intelligent automation strategy and implementation engagements at Fortune 1000 companies, and he is the Intelligent Automation Council co-chair with the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining. Steve, I will pass it off to you from here.
All right, thanks, Nick. And thanks to Kate, Lindsay, and the rest of the RVA Tech team for putting this together. To those in attendance, welcome, and thank you for joining us. We're excited for the opportunity to talk about process intelligence. Our audience runs the spectrum from those of you learning about process intelligence for the first time to subject matter experts that are already leveraging this technology to improve operations. So whether you're joining us live or catching this as a recording, I hope we address your areas of interest. And if you want to go deeper, just give us a call and we'd be happy to schedule some follow-up. Our plan for the next hour is to introduce the concept of process intelligence, including process mining and task mining, provide a market overview and summarize the competitive landscape, demonstrate process mining capabilities in action, and highlight effective use cases. Afterwards, we'll have time for Q&A, so please use that chat feature to send us your questions, and we'll have time at the end to address them. But before I hand it over to Chris and John, I wanted to share a little bit of information about Maine Digital. We are a boutique consulting firm founded in 2018 and headquartered in McLean, Virginia. Despite an interesting business environment over the last couple of years, we stayed focused on the success of our clients, enabling us to triple in size. We take a technology agnostic approach, but have partnerships with leading technology providers, including UiPath, Pega, and Celonis. And we're recognized as both a great place to work and a great partner to work with. On our client engagements, we leverage the Maine method, a framework that provides both structure and flexibility, enabling us to deliver client-focused results. We focus on the domains of intelligent automation, technology transformation, and digital experience, and we support our clients through projects to advise, implement, and operate in an impactful way. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Chris Behrle to provide an introduction to process mining. Chris?
Thank you, Steve. So at its basis, process mining has been around in various forms for a long time. At some point, most of us have mapped out a process on a whiteboard using Post-it notes. It's a very time-consuming and arduous task to get a subjective process map that is then used to identify process improvement or automation opportunities. Today, we are defining process mining as the analytical discipline for visualizing and analyzing a process using their digital footprints stored in transactional systems such as SAP, Oracle, and Workday, to name a few. And we'll dive deeper into this. So the way this works is by extracting three important pieces of information from event logs. Information about the process steps or activities that have been conducted, information about the point in time at which this activity was conducted, and then information about the unique ID that tracks through the process. The combination of these three things, activity, time, and ID, is called the digital footprint. Process mining takes the digital footprint from an event log stored in the transaction system and converts it into an intelligent process map and analytical tool. This process map contains all the activities and process variants that are currently being performed. Using this information with additional variables such as, for example, invoice amount, customer name, vendor name, region, or other important information we can relate to the unique process ID, we can create powerful analytics to identify process improvement opportunities. This allows us to get a full picture of the process from the information systems perspective. A good example of this is from my previous process mining client. After implementing process mining on an accounts receivable process, we were able to identify that part of the process was automated, but 45% of transactions contained manual activities. These variants were requiring thousands of manual hours, and after analysis, it was determined that the majority could be added to existing automations in production with only minor adjustments required. They were simply overlooked during the manual discovery process. And this was able to almost double the benefits from automation. And this tool goes beyond just opportunity identification. It can also be used to monitor and manage a process, work with AI and machine learning to generate better results, and we will deep dive more into that during our demo. Next, we have task mining. So task mining accomplishes a very similar goal to process mining. It provides process clarity, but in an entirely different but complementary way. Instead of working from event logs and information systems, task mining is installed directly to process users' computers and analyzes user interaction data. Task mining collects all the process data not captured by process mining, including unstructured applications such as Word, Outlook, and Excel, for example. We can then train the software to identify when a process is being performed based on the sequence of applications used. For example, if the process steps involve Oracle, Outlook, another application, and finally Workday, it could possibly be identified as employee onboarding. From there, we can gather data about the pattern, number of clicks, keystrokes, and other information gathered from OCR to break down the process and better understand the variables affecting efficiency. Depending on the vendor, this information can be used to generate process maps, breakdowns of time spent, identify bottlenecks, opportunities for automation, and also be used as an input for process improvement in Lean Six Sigma. For example, one major inefficiency task mining has identified is the high error rate and amount of time spent in less productive unstructured applications such as Outlook and Word in different processes. So now we have process intelligence. Process intelligence, as we're calling it, is the combination of process mining and task mining. Process mining extracts all the business data in your transactional systems to show you what your process actually looks like in real time, where the inefficiencies lie based on your event log. And it's like a live X-ray of your business. But the visualization is missing something crucial. What happens on desktops all over the organization to actually make the process happen? Task mining collects and analyzes the user data to give enterprises that complete picture of how the business executes their process, not just process-wise, but also people-wise too. So process intelligence is like the 360-degree view of the process. So with that, let me hand it over to John Cremo for the market overview and competitive landscape.
Thanks, Chris. Take you to the next slide. So what I want to talk about is more around some of the recent market trends, share some findings that are hot off the press in this space, and just share some simple suggestions as to how you can move forward. So Chris, you go to the next slide. So yeah, so I thought this was really interesting. So Gartner, sort of how HFS coined the term process intelligence, Gartner coined the term hyper automation, right? And that's where they fit all these different emerging technologies like RPA, process intelligence in there. And obviously what we want to talk about today is how process intelligence fits into this broader realm of hyper automation, digital transformation, and whatnot, right? So I thought this was really interesting. So Gartner and their strategic planning assumptions, they said that, by 2023, citizen developers are going to outnumber professional developers by 4x. And by 2024, they think that, using hyper automation to redesign a lot of your business operational processes, you're going to see a 30% reduction in those operational expenses. And I think that's great. When I think about that, and I see some of the names in the call, and some of you are very familiar with citizen development. Again, this just goes back to the point of people, process, technology. We don't want to automate a bad process and whatnot. In order to set those citizen developers up for success, we need to fundamentally redesign processes. We got to lean them out. We got to build the right muscle, all that. And because we need to make sure that we're setting them up for success, right? Citizen developers, these business technologists, they're not going to have the depth and the background, say, that a professional developer may have, right? So as we start to charter on this journey with citizen developers to get to that 30% outcome, I mean, we're going to need to give them very specific targeted use cases to take, implement, and manage going forward, right? So again, you really can't, in my mind, you can't talk about automation unless you're talking about process redesign, whatnot. So that's sort of what I want to stay focused on. So Chris, you go to the next slide. So there's another cool theme out there where process is strategic, process is no longer tactical, right? So Forrester ran a really interesting study where what they were saying was they were looking at leaders, experts from over 100 companies and saying, what were your goals in 2019? What are your goals now? And what do you think your goals are going to be going forward when it comes to like these process optimization initiatives, right? Your priorities, like what is the most important thing to you? And I mean, 2019 pre-pandemic, a lot of folks were obviously putting a higher degree of emphasis on, cost takeout, productivity improvements. And to go with that theme, process is now strategic. Business cases are the business cases that are getting the most attention, that are sought after, are the ones that are focused on customer experience, focusing on accelerating that broader digital transformation that's been brought on by the pandemic. Chris, go to the next slide. And just to reemphasize that point, they then double clicked on that and they said, okay, well, you want to accelerate your digital transformation, you want to improve that end-to-end customer experience. In order to do that, you're going to have to do big things, right, with your processes. It's not going to be necessarily going around and taking a piecemeal tactical approach to where I'm going to automate this step in the process or whatnot. We need to look at how we the digital strategy on the process level, right? So how are we going to reinvent? How are we going to transform? To what degree are we going to seek to leverage some of these emerging technologies to automate the vast majority of our processes? And I thought it was interesting, 76% fell into that bucket of we want to take an end-to-end approach with this, right? We want, while the less majority, they are taking, again, nothing wrong with it. We're gonna be a little more conservative. We're gonna make some small adjustments as to how we want to integrate this technology into our processes. And so with that, folks are setting themselves up for, again, the strategic size of process improvement. Chris, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, and so that's all fine and good. I thought this was another really interesting step that I wanted to share. So again, what are the frameworks or the methodologies that these enterprises are going to look to employ? Some of these probably look familiar to the group. Customer journey mapping, design thinking, value stream mapping, right? Depending on the goal that you're seeking, right? This is going to really influence the framework, right, or the methods that you use, right? If I'm going to be chasing customer experience, I'm probably going to be employing some customer journey mapping. If I'm looking to transform an end-to-end process, I have my lean team available. I'm probably going to do some broad value stream mapping or whatnot, right? There's some other techniques or approaches that folks are taking, but I thought that this was an interesting look as to this is how we as enterprises today look to integrate technology into our processes. And Chris, you go to the next slide. And so now to kind of bring it back to process intelligence, HFS, Force Sources, great research group. If you're looking for intel on this, they did a study with Global 2000 where they're trying to understand maturity. To what degree are these enterprises leveraging process intelligence? Again, as Chris said earlier, I may be using process mining, I may be using task mining, or I may be using both, right? And I was really surprised by this, right? 94% in North America have either already started implementing process intelligence, or either in silos at their companies, or they're using it at scale. So 71% or 2/3 are already there. You have a smaller majority that are starting to pilot it, and then the others haven't really explored it yet. So that's pretty cool, right? And what we'll talk about is how you can go ahead and use this. How am I applying process intelligence? Chris, you go to the next slide. Yeah, so what this is focused on is some of the challenges with process intelligence, right? So and I guess this isn't just necessarily for process intelligence. This is digital transformation as a whole, right? One of the things that study double clicked into is trying to understand to what degree are your processes still involving paper, or are you using these manual electronic approaches, such as as Chris said, email, spreadsheets, and whatnot. Right. And so when process mining first came out, when it was hot, in 2017, 2018, I mean, and I remember this, when I was at Deloitte, it really couldn't help us see the end-to-end picture, right? Because a lot of the processes that we were, assessing, had those manual steps or paper, or we're using a lot of these desktop-based applications such as Microsoft Excel, right? And it's really, a lot of the process mining products can't get at it. And so this is why, task mining is really hot right now, because it can help you digest those data points that you would see from an email inbox, that you would see, when you're in Excel or whatnot. And again, even just using those itself, you're not going to be able to see the full picture between these two. And so that's why you need to pair these, or you should pair these with some of those fundamental, well-known approaches towards process design or design thinking, customer journey mapping, or value stream mapping, to really help you when you get into those scenarios and you can't get at data, you still have a structured, repeatable framework for problem solving, right? So, so again, process mining, it's wonderful. It's going to help you, get at data that you couldn't get at before. It's going to, as you're going to see when Chris goes into his demo, visualize processes that otherwise you couldn't really see it that way before. But, again, with the task mining and just traditional manual approaches towards process improvement, you're going to need all of that in order to really, fully see the benefits of this technology. Chris, you go to the next slide. Yeah, so again, just my recommendations for right now, I'll keep this quick, is one is if you haven't already explored this, I would look to go with a vendor that's offering both process mining and task mining, or what a lot of the situation that a lot of folks are in is they probably have a vendor already picked that's covering either process or task mining. And what I would look to do is look at that vendor's strategic partnerships, right? And see which ones, see where they have partnerships with the other, right? So for example, Pega has a great task mining product, workforce intelligence, right? They don't right now have a process mining product. They've partnered with Celonis. They're on that roadmap. So to try to get some synergies between their products, right? The other thing that I would look to do is, the second point there is look to supplement those existing process improvement frameworks. Use these tools to help you as a part of that, right? So for example, like when I was at IBM, we had to redesign IBM's onboarding provisioning process that we'd run almost 100,000 contractors and employees through a year. That they had over 8,000 variations. Would have loved to have had these tools to help me with that, right? We had to make a lot of assumptions. I'm sure anyone familiar with that technique understands what I mean when I say that. So, I would have loved to have paired these products with that. The other thing that I would do is don't use it as a silo, and there's probably existing teams in your company where where it's an automation COE, where they are already using complementary technologies, maybe like RPA. Look to bring that capability into that group, because there's going to, as I was saying earlier, there's going to be data quality challenges you're going to face. There's probably going to be skill gaps, right? So again, start to leverage your scale, work within your automation COE. That would be my suggestion. Chris, back to you.
All right, thank you, John. We just have a little overview of the vendors here, but we're going to continue on to the 2021 Peak Matrix Assessment performed by Everest Group. It covers the software product vendor landscape for process mining. So on the x-axis, we have the vision capability, and on the y-axis, we have the current market impact. So the key takeaway here is that we have many competitors in the marketplace, and our current top leaders are UiPath, Minute, Software AG, and Celonis. This technology is growing quickly, and we expect to see changes as new capabilities are developed. With that, I think we can jump into the process mining demo. So today we are going to perform a demonstration of the accounts payable process. We have selected Celonis Process Mining for this demonstration because they are the current market leader. All right, perfect. So what you see here on the left is the X-ray view of the process, generated from real process data pulled from event logs. Let's take a quick minute to familiarize ourselves with the steps in the happy path, aka the most common process variant. We start with the vendor creating the invoice, recording the goods receipt, recording the invoice receipt, posting the invoice, clearing the invoice, and finally passing the due date. Manually, generating a happy path like this with average throughput time and case frequency typically requires days, if not weeks, depending on the process, and requires hours of SME input time. Each additional variant multiplies that required effort. In this case, the happy path here is only covering 20% of cases, as you can see at the bottom right. Process mining will allow us to dig deeper in that happy path and uncover what is really happening in our process. By widening our view to include the 9 most common process variants, things get a lot more complex. You can see that many additional activities that are more than likely manually performed exceptions are included here. So we now have change quantity, change vendor, change tax code, approve it, invoice, change price, etc. Additional activities that are typically manual. This is still just covering 9 out of over 14,000 plus variations in this process. And this is very common to have a lot of variations. I'm going to click play on just one of them. We can watch each of these variant paths. In this example, we're seeing a variant where the due date passes before the invoice is cleared. Now, if we widen even further to consider the entire population, you just click that there. What we get is called the spaghetti model. And I'm sure you can see why. Let me zoom in just so you can see how complicated it is. This is what 14,000 process variants look like. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. And it's one of my favorite parts of an implementation, because when a process owner or SME sees the true complexity of a process that they've been so close to, they're always amazed at just how complex it is. So let's jump back to an easier to view process map of just the 2 most common variants that are covering 36%. On the left, we see change quantity activity is associated with nearly 100,000 invoices. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that. Manual rework like this has a massive impact on productivity. So let's dive deeper into labor productivity to locate a potential cause. So now we are going to look at some pre-built business applications that will aid in identifying value. Keep in mind, all of these can be customized to fit the business-specific needs and use cases. In this labor productivity tab, we have the process X-ray view on the left. And then on the right, we have several important KPIs that will help us uncover inefficiencies and gaps within the process. The KPIs include the touchless invoice rate, which is the number of invoices that complete the process without manual intervention, the average cycle time. We have the manual rework activities, including quantity changes, late goods receipt, vendor mismatch. And then we have a smart drill down or smart table that will allow us to drill down based on different attributes, including company code, material group, posting key, document type, etc. So jumping back to our top metric, we see that just 11% of invoices are touchless. And this causes friction and leads to longer payment cycles. So let's dive deeper and try to uncover why this might be happening. So here we have the change quantity from earlier. As we can see here on the right, it is also the top activity contributing to manual rework. So let's click on that and select all cases with just change quantity. So we're now looking at 16% of the population. So now let's check out what other criteria might help us narrow down our search. In the drill down section, we can investigate which company code has the most invoices and highest cycle time. So at the top, we see the top invoices is Milwaukee with 61,000. And they also have a high average cycle time of 48 days. So let's select that. So what we have just discovered is that invoices that go through the change quantity activity and have the Milwaukee company code account for 61,000 of the 93,000 invoices that were focused on or that contain the activity of change quantity. Just to reiterate, with just a few clicks, we were able to drill down from 604,000 orders to 61,000 invoices and found a single variant with a single company code responsible for 60,000 manual touches. If we deep dive into this, we would more than likely discover that inaccurate invoice recording is likely to be the culprit. By eliminating the need for manual intervention, we would be able to eliminate over 60,000 manual touches, providing a strong amount of savings. So what can be done to fix this? Well, there's a couple options. We can implement an automation from a third party or directly through Celonis in this case. Additionally, we can create a Celonis action flow where we can automate or automatically update the quantity of data in the system and send emails out to ensure timely resolution. But we'll go over all of this in more detail later in this demonstration. So let's jump into use case 2. This is focusing on working capital. So I'm going to clear the filters from before. Here we're going to be looking at a business application designed for optimizing working capital. Optimizing working capital within accounts payable is focusing on both achieving cash discounts and reducing the amount of days early that a payment is made in order to maximize working capital. In this business application, we can see there is 4.8 billion in early paid invoices. Let's focus on the mismatch of payment terms, which, as you can see here, is the top root cause for early payment. So I'm going to select that and filter. The first thing we notice on the process X-ray is that the most common variant contains the activity change price, a manual activity. So let's focus on that. And I'll now select cases with change price. We can also remove mismatch of payment terms for now, so that way we can get the full population containing change price. So as you can see here on the right, we have $2.2 billion in invoices paid too early correlated to that activity. If we sort by invoice value here at the bottom, one thing that we notice is that almost all of this occurs in invoices with values of higher than $10,000 and may be being pushed through manually because of the invoice amount. Similar to what we noticed in the last business application, the root cause can be one of a couple things, including incorrect invoice recording or incorrect manual processing, or just a need to have that processed through a manual means. So the solution, similar to the touchless invoice case, can involve instituting automation to handle any invoices below a select threshold and instituting automated workflows to ensure that the invoices are being included in the closest payment run to their due date. So let's take a quick look at how that would be done in Celonis using their action engine, or a similar example in this case. So here we have the action engine. I'm going to select optimal payment timing. Going to take a second to load here. The action engine empowers employees to prioritize, correctly avoid duplicate payments, optimize master data while paying invoices at the optimal point in time. It does this by automatically generating signals for predefined cases, such as invoices that may be in danger of late payment, early payment, maverick buying, opportunities to better customer service, such as prioritizing important customer orders, and master data alignment, and many others. What we can see in this list of signals that are generated automatically, we can see that these signals are being generated automatically and being sent to Celonis from custom action engine skills that can be built. For example, at the top, we have maverick buying. We can see that the signal was created, its status, who it is assigned to, and then some signal details such as vendor, maverick buying ratio, and order value. So let's click on Overview, where we can see a list of the areas that signals are being produced for. We can see align vendor master data, align high priority tickets, maverick buying, prioritizing, etc. We can also track how many are open, in progress, and awaiting confirmation. So let's jump to align vendor master data with incoming invoices, because in our previous use case, that seemed to be one of the issues. Let's click in there. What we see is that the vendor master data seems to be out of date. For the last 20 invoices, the payment details needed to be adjusted manually, and you can see that right at the top. At the bottom, it's showing the discrepancy between the master data and the invoice number. Along with that, at the bottom, we can post comments on this specific signal. We can also look at the past history of this signal. As you can see here, I've been in this one a lot yesterday and today. Some other unique features is we can then assign to myself. I can assign it to another user. This will create a drop down of users, or we can directly correct it right from here by clicking Update Master. And this will take us right into the system where it should be updated. So let me go to the history here just so you can see other ones that have been answered. So we have just seen 2 examples of how we can identify a cause, and now we have seen how process mining technology can create a solution. The key takeaway here is that process mining is capable of discovering opportunities, tracking changes, running process simulations, incorporating AI for predictive analytics, executive KPI dashboarding, automating workflows, and producing signals to ensure tracking and resolution of priority issues. So there's a wide span of different capabilities within this technology. And with that, I will turn it over to Steve to show where value has been created.
All right, thanks, Chris. That was a fantastic demonstration of process mining in action. That spaghetti model is a real eye-opener in terms of process complexity. So before we head into Q&A, I did want to share some high-level results that businesses have realized with Celonis and other process mining tools. At Uber, they found $20 million in efficiency gains by improving their case handling time. Over at L'Oreal, they increased their touchless order rate by 800%. And at a large US bank, they avoided an estimated $10 million in fines through improved reporting and SLA management. And those are just a few examples. So while today's demo focused on invoices, there are use cases for process intelligence in nearly every industry and across the entire value chain. So as you start to think about where to start within your organizations, here are a couple of things to consider. And that next slide, Chris. From a data perspective, it's important to identify a process that can be tracked in event logs. From an infrastructure perspective, you'll need to connect your data and systems to the process mining tool, and you'll need to work through any InfoSec concerns your company has. InfoSec is often the most time-consuming part of any implementation. But given the breadth of clients that are leveraging process mining, there are paths and successes to get through that process, and most of your partners will help address any InfoSec concerns that are out there. From a process perspective, it's best to have a clearly defined use case to start with. You can expand to other processes and other lines of businesses later after you've proven out value in one area. High volumes are good too. It gives you more data to work with. And then finally, I'd recommend starting with a process that has potential for optimization. A process where there's room for improvement, but you don't know where to focus your optimization efforts because you're limited to that current happy state understanding of the process model, and you don't have that spaghetti view that Chris showed earlier that really shows you the myriad of variations that exist. So with that as background, I think it's time to switch over to the Q&A portion of the conversation and see if we can answer any questions for the group. Chris, we had one question come through in the Q&A chat already. Anuraj asks, what are the important factors needed to be considered or focus on for the customer journey mapping aspect of process mining?
Sure. So, I mean, if you mean a customer journey from like start to, to implementing process mining, some of the important aspects to concentrate on are obviously, selecting your vendor, ensuring that you have strong use cases, understanding what your background systems are for your processes, so you know how it's going to integrate with the selected vendor. Also, you have your InfoSec concerns and all of that. So whether you want on-prem or in the cloud connections, all of that is kind of activities that would be on your map of getting from, learning about the technology to implementing the technology.
All right, thanks, Chris. We have an anonymous question. What is the best way to start process mining and how long does it take? Chris, I think this is a good opportunity. Let's assume for this answer that you've identified a business process area, you've selected a vendor, you're working with a partner to implement the technology, let's say in accounts payable. Talk to us about the time to value from the decision from the beginning of an implementation through the first process map that's giving you highlights. What does that look like for customers?
Sure. So we can look at this from a couple different ways, but looking at it from basically selecting the process and having the vendor set up to the process map being established, that time span could be about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on your systems, as well as how customized some of the data fields are. And then if you're looking at it from signing on with a vendor to delivering value, aka giving business cases, identifying those use cases, and creating, really creating that business case at the end, that's typically about 6 to 10 weeks, focusing around an average of 8 weeks in most cases. For example, in accounts payable in a process that we've done before, it was an 8-week time period.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Just
Stephanie,
to build on that, just to build on that real quick. I mean, I know we're talking about process intelligence. Just again, think about this as like a subcategory within like business intelligence, right? I mean, business intelligence analytics have been around for a while, right? The other thing I would just add is, if you come from that space like I do, are you trying to build an automated live feed to your data set? Or is it going to be a tactical, I'm going to load it in manually, right? As you all know, then it's going to be much more challenging. It's going to potentially take more time to build that automated data feed. And the other thing you got to consider is, one of the things that separates these vendors from the other is which applications they work well with, right? Like if you are an SAP shop, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to start working with like Celonis. That's how they made their name. They've mapped every table imaginable at SAP. And so, I mean, they have a lot of reusable assets in there that can speed up time. So happy to talk more about that, but yeah, I mean, it's going to vary based on your requirements. So.
All right, thanks, Chris and John. Another question came through from Stephanie. What and when what kind of ROI can a company expect to see? Is it similar to RPA automation, or does it take longer or shorter? I'll try to tackle that one first.
Sure.
As Chris just alluded to, businesses can see value from process mining and task mining solutions in as little as 30 days. And that value initially begins with a deeper understanding of where the process optimization and improvement opportunities exist. From there, the cool thing about these tools is they allow you to go down several different paths that I like to describe as running the engine and optimizing the engine. So from a running the engine perspective, you can manage many aspects of your business processes to optimize your day-to-day operations without changing your business processes. So if you need to flex resources over to a high volume area or a place in the business where you're about to miss SLAs, you've got that visualization and you can kind of steer the car and run the engine that way. Longer term, leveraging tools like Chris showed off in the demo, there are opportunities out there to identify the problem areas that warrant deeper process optimizations, automations, or simply just process improvement engagements that lead to those longer term ROI expectations. So short answer, you can see value in as little as 30 days. The longer term answer, if you're trying to get to those $6 million, $10 million ROIs, it's largely dependent on how you use the data, what actions you take, and how you move forward. So I hope that answers the question. Then I had one more question out there from another anonymous attendee. What are some examples of processes in info security or cybersecurity where Celonis and or process intelligence is applicable? So that, Chris or John, would be use cases specific to the InfoSec or cybersecurity industries is how I read that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, any process really that involves high volume and clearly defined activities can be used for process mining. So, you know, we can dive deeper into specific cases for different areas at a different time, but at its basis, really what you need is just those three things that we talked about, which is a unique ID, an activity name, and a timestamp. And as long as the info security processes that you're thinking about have all three of those, they would be a good candidate for process mining.
Yeah, and I think there are use cases too that sort of span industries and verticals. Every business has got some level of finance and administration. So there's an accounts payable and an accounts receivable process in there. Customer service, anywhere that there's a help desk, opportunities to improve that. It's really just identifying those high volume areas that there's a business process with an opportunity to improve as to where I would go focus my energies first. So. All right, with that, I think we've addressed all of the questions in the Q&A. Nick, I'll ask if you received any questions through other channels, make sure that we address those.
Sure, I have a couple others, Steve, and we have a few more minutes left. So maybe I'll go through one or two if that's okay.
Sure.
So I have here, when considering process mining, what should we look for in a candidate business process? Is that something you've already addressed?
Yeah, we touched on it. I think I touched on that last slide, but maybe I'll let Chris articulate it a little bit better from both a data and a business process perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that you really want to focus on is going into it, you want to have a clearly defined use case. For example, one of the cases we looked at was increasing the touchless invoice rate. So you want to have an understanding of like what is the change you want to see in that process. That way you can focus both the analytics and also the results on that. And then the other things we already kind of discussed was a high process volume and potential for optimization. So say it hasn't just gone through a round of process improvements or something like that. That also helps to make it more of a potential for discovering optimization. I mean, even if it has, usually there's a lot of stuff that we still find regardless. And then source system connection. So really, you want to understand what your vendor is able to connect with quickly and easily. So that is usually a big determining factor of your implementation timeline, which kind of builds into that business case.
Yeah, and on that line, Chris, I think most of the solution providers have pre-built interfaces to the major systems, Workday, Oracle, any of your major ERP systems. If you're leveraging smaller or custom-built technologies, process mining is still an option. Those pre-built connectors just aren't there, and implementation might take a little bit longer and require some customization. So,
I have one more for you guys, if you're okay with it. We have here, can process mining work in an environment that leverages custom-built applications?
Yeah, so I must have been reading your mind on that one. And I'll let Chris elaborate. But I think the broader point here is, as you would expect, most of the vendors in this space have, through their previous client implementations, have made it easier for new clients to come on board and provided a marketplace with pre-built integrations. So when we get into that custom application space, if that core information is still there, an ability to track individual actions through an event log, there's a need to do some custom implementation work, and it's certainly possible. It's just not as out of the box as it were in dealing with larger systems.
So while it's not as out of the box, it's definitely not something that would be seen as exceptional. It's something that is frequently happens. Many companies have custom built systems. So really, as long as it has those 3 pieces of information within the system, as we discussed before, I'll say it one last time: activity name, timestamp, and unique ID. We're able to work with that data in order to build that process map.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, John. We are starting to run up against the clock here, so we will close it out for the day. But I want to thank you all for your expertise and for all the prep and work that went into helping our audience out today. So thanks so much for joining.
All right. Thanks for hosting, Nick. Appreciate it.
And I want to
Thank you.
thank all of you who are joining on your lunch hour today for another edition of RVA Tech's Tech It Yourself webinar series. If you're not familiar with our live events, they are starting to get up and running again. We have our next conference for the year, the RVA Tech Edge Conference, coming up on December 8th, where we're going to tackle topics such as cloud, DevOps, and enterprise architecture. And we will be live and in person over at the Hippodrome, which is over near Jackson Ward. And we will also have a virtual option for that as well, if you can't get out and about just quite yet. So again, thanks so much to all the folks at Main Digital, Chris, Steve, John, appreciate your time. Thanks to all of you for joining. We'll see you next time on Tech It Yourself from RVA Tech.